further ado, let's talk about our first session. In our first session, we have human connectivity, the missing ingredient in digital transformation. And we have two great leaders who are going to be with us and guide us through this session. We have Cliff Tironi, who is the managing partner of Thinaer. Cliff, bring your camera on, and Michael, bring your camera on when you can. And Cliff is a co-creator of the real-time feedback platform used as the core tool for driving the digital transformation in consulting. Cliff has a passion for data visualization as a method to uncover deeper, meaningful, and powerful insights. Now, Michael Rivera is the Chief Analytics Officer and Senior Consultant of Thinaer, and also co-creator of Thinaer's real-time feedback platform. So you're learning directly from the creators of these methods. Michael has a dual appointment. The other is Associate Professor of Strategy and Innovation at the Fox School of Business at Temple University. Cliff and Michael, it's a real honor to have you with us. Very much looking forward to your presentation. And Cliff, I'm going to give you presentation rights now so that you can guide us through the session.
Great.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jose. Let's see. You should. Okay, you should see my screen okay then, everybody.
Looks good.
All right, thanks for that great introduction, Jose, and thrilled to be here with everybody. We're going to dig right into the content here. We have a lot of meaty coverage here for you, and we're going to be talking about the missing ingredient in digital transformation, human connectivity. And when you think about your organization and the number of people that you have within it, it's not just your employees, there's also your clients, there's your vendors, and then you think about all the assets that you might have, like your machinery, your equipment, and those are all sort of scattered about your organization, and clusters work together, and there are different cross-functional teams. And this is a really abstract rendering that you could think about these dots as being those stakeholders or those assets, and some are more closely connected, but by and large, these pieces are sort of scattered throughout the organization, and even sometimes external to your organization. And what we're going to be spending a lot of time on today is the power in enhanced connectivity across those people, right? And so this is where the human connectivity comes in digital transformation. And we're specifically going to be talking about how the power of real-time feedback can be used as a powerful connector across your employees, across your clients, to really drive and bring about transformational change. And Michael's going to give you a really, really great case study on how one Fortune 100 company is using this power to transform their entire stage gate operations. But more so, what we're going to give you is a really, really powerful solution and a framework that you can start using in your company today. So again, this is a really abstract rendering. How does this actually work in practice? You may have been on yesterday's sessions where we presented with our sister company, DevelopMe, and Patrick Law, who is the SVP at Fiserv, on how Fiserv is really doing some amazing things around harnessing the power of real-time client feedback and employee feedback to drive meaningful change. And so if you saw yesterday's presentation, great. We're going to give a very, very quick 30-second overview of some of the content that we covered. And if you didn't have a chance to see it, then this will be new information for you. So this is a nice isometric graph that paints a really comprehensive picture of what I envision it probably looks like in many of your companies as a financial services institution. So, and let me just walk you through what the different points are here. Here's how you can use the power, in this case, of client feedback to bring really, really powerful change. So on the left-hand side, you see a client that gives a client services team member feedback through a technology platform about a recurring service issue that they're experiencing. And so that client submits that feedback, and this is very different from a survey that a client may get at the end of a project. This is something that's happening sort of throughout a project implementation. And so now in step 2, you could see that that feedback is assigned to the support team representative, right, the CSR. They can see that feedback, they can review it, and then in step 3, that CSR can actually escalate that feedback within the system to leadership for their assistance, because this particular associate recognizes that the client feedback that was just submitted is not something that's specific to that client. It's actually something that's impacting many of their clients. So here in step 4, the client services leadership can now review that feedback. And here's what's great. Technology prompts face-to-face conversations, all right? So paradoxically, yes, it does. And so here in step 4, the client services leadership team can strike up a conversation with the disputes department to say, hey, look, I'm noticing something in the feedback. Can we collaborate and work together to address it? So now in step 5, you can see that the disputes team can review that feedback as well. And they also understand that this is something more systemic and not just a one-off issue. Later on in step 6, that same CSR who got feedback from the client can actually close the loop now with the client, and they can actually respond and say, you know what, we heard you, we know this is an issue, thank you, and here's what we did as a result of it. And that really, really makes the client feel heard. And simultaneously, the same CSR can actually actively request feedback again from that client and say, hey, look, thank you for providing this feedback. It helped us change. How are we doing now? Are we still meeting your needs? And so lastly, there in the upper right-hand corner, you could see senior leadership. Using a tool like this gives them the ability to look across all of their assets, all of their stakeholders, and review those trends to ensure a really high degree of excellence and satisfaction. So with that, I'm going to give you just a little bit about who we are, in case you're not familiar with us. Thinaer is a company that offers a holistic digital transformation solution, and we have these really high-powered, amazing IoT beacons and sensors that can measure anything and everything that you would ever want to know about your assets, breadcrumb trails, environmentals, anomalies in manufacturing processes. And then to complement that, we also offer a high-powered real-time feedback solution, which collects meaningful feedback from your most important stakeholders, your employees, your clients, on things like employees' competencies or process improvements. And so the combination of machine-generated data with human-based feedback offers a truly unprecedented 360-degree view of your entire operations. And so we wrap all that around in consultative services like supportive change management and business process redesign. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to my colleague, Michael, who, like I said before, he's going to walk you through a really great case of a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 firm that is harnessing the power of real-time feedback to transform their stage gate process. And then he's also going to walk you through, we're going to spend most of the time giving you access to a free tool that you can start using today in your company. So Michael, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, great. Thank you, Cliff. Appreciate that introduction. Everyone who's joining us this morning, really fantastic to be here with you and have a chance to talk a little bit around about the work that we're doing, something that we're very passionate about. So over the last year and a half, we've been working with a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 firm to transform their stage gate process. And I'd like to tell you a bit of that story through the lens of a case study in order to provide some insight into the work that we did, just to kind of give you some insight into what unfolded, but more importantly, how we went about it, because that's really the unique aspect to the work that we're doing. We're all focused as leaders on solving business problems. Sometimes we have success, sometimes we have failure, and a tremendous difference in whether it goes one way or the other is involved in the strategies that we employ and how we go about doing it. So let's frame up this engagement a little bit here. Let's take a look at the project, the solution, and the outcome. So at the heart of this effort is an enterprise-wide digital transformation process aimed to reimagine how products are brought to market. And you can think of this stage gate as a gated workflow where ideas are conceived on one end and they move through various other business phases or gates until that idea reaches the customer. And so ideally, you want lots of ideas coming into the stage gate process so that they can be refined, maybe even eliminated over time. You want the best, strongest product ideas to win, to make it all the way through in better shape than when they started. And when you think stage gate, you can also think of this synonymously in terms of a company's go-to-market strategy. And so for a Fortune 100 company, you can envision how this is a core process for their business. This in its simplest form is how they create value for their customers. Regardless of the business or industry, we each have our own version of a stage gate process for our goods and our services. Each of us in our own respective industries has a core process which creates value for our customers. And this process is sacred. It's something that represents innovation. It's something that represents performance. It's something that represents transformation. It's really within our organizations what ought to work really well and be that secret sauce, that difference maker in the way our organization performs competitively. So my question for you is, what is that process or problem for you in your own business? What is that problem that needs focus or needs to be digitally transformed? What is that one major component within your company that, if re-envisioned, would be a tremendous unlocker? And I'd like you to think about that for a moment. Try to get something in mind. Maybe jot down what that is. I'll start to frame up a little bit around how we went through this particular digital transformation process to solve that problem. But as Cliff mentioned, we'll also be sharing with you our tool. And as you work through our tool, you'll have a chance to kind of work through your own problem and start to position things for a solution. Now, I want you to think for a moment here about the complexity involved in going from A to B and all the aspects that are between in that process for our stage gate problem that we were solving, for your problem that you have in mind. Consider the people, the processes, the systems. And in addition to those core components, core to process redesign, think about other facets that are often involved in large-scale enterprise-wide transformations. You have change, you have the need for data, you have the need for feedback. And change is often hard to successfully achieve. We often know, for as many examples of success, we can note many examples of failure. And sometimes success can be elusive. But regardless, we have to go after those problems because the ability to transform them is really where the opportunity exists. So prior to kind of embarking on this large scale change process, we knew that there were many challenges in the system. And the isometric that you're looking at here represents and frames out some of the various challenges that were existing within this large organization. We noticed as ideas were being conceived and as teams were trying to move them along to ultimately being operationalized and commercialized and put on store shelves for customers, that there was a lot of noise in the system. First, cross-functional teams begin to move products along to market without adequate planning and strategy. And so there's all sorts of reasons why even a great organization sometimes cuts corners in order to meet sufficiency. There's planned revenue goals that they know that they need to achieve. They can take a look at their products and pipeline. They can be constantly recalibrating on the amount of profit and revenue that launches throughout the year will generate, and they may realize there's a gap, and wow, we need to close it. So we may say, wow, what other products are in the stage gate that maybe aren't ready, but gosh, we need to take them to market now. Secondly, ideas and feedback are kept to their siloed functional areas. There isn't strong cross-functional communication or collaboration. So each cross-functional area owns their information, they own their work, they're good at their work, they're good at what they do, but there's not a lot of cross-functional sharing. And so everyone has their blinders on, they're in their silos. Across functional areas, we do not have collaboration, the sharing of ideas in order to help each other do their own area better. Thirdly, project inputs are estimations and not based on reliable data sources. Within all of our organizations, we're always challenged for great data. The better that we can plan, though, the better that we can strategize at the outset, the better we're able to position our projects for success as they move throughout complicated workflows and processes. And in an effort to move things along, sometimes we don't go to the detail to provide very valid inputs into what we're creating. For the sake of speed, we may say, this is close, or we'll come back to this later. But as time moves on and all sorts of further interactions and dynamics occur, we just run out of time to do that. And sometimes those projects carry forward without being shored up as nicely as they should be. Fourth, project team owners focused more on scheduling meetings and resolving issues, putting out fires, than leading from the front and driving a strong structured process. So in many of these cases where there were project teams, or synonymously product teams, a team of cross-functional areas taking an idea, trying to create a product out of it and move it to market, the project leaders were focusing more around corralling team members, working to get them oriented. Escalations were cropping up where there were major fires that needed to be addressed. And that took their focus away from really creating a strong process, managing that strong process, and ensuring that those workflows and dynamics are functioning appropriately. And lastly, the decision to move projects forward and invest capital are based on intuition as opposed to data. So as some products move forward, they can't always be operationalized on existing infrastructure or existing lines. And as a result of that, some capital investment is needed. But if you recall earlier, product teams here are rushing to market. They're not using validated data. It's based on assumptions. And as a result of that, here we are, we find ourselves in the stage gate process, choosing to invest real capital into something that has not been locked down from a business case perspective. There were some other really clear challenges that we noticed within this process. And on this next screen here, we can really see one very clearly delineated. This Fortune 100 company had what they termed an innovation tunnel. Every idea that came in, came out. Almost 100% of the ideas that were generated for new product ideas ultimately were commercialized and brought to market. What they didn't have and what they wanted to achieve was more of an innovation funnel where ideas were brought in, ideas were refined, ideas were canceled, eliminated, killed, removed from the process so that we only focused on the best ideas. The ideas that focused most on meeting customer needs were something that the organization very feasibly could create. And lastly, had a really strong business case. There was tremendous viability around making this investment, bringing it to the market, because we knew that we were going to get the ROI on that work that was necessary. Thirdly, here, as a way to kind of frame up this problem, we can highlight a few financial metrics that were really clear around the problem that we were focused on. 27 million is the projected loss in earnings for 2022 on just a select project group of launches if they were to follow the process as is. 10.3% reduction in margin contribution from the investment market performance to ultimately that product being commercialized and generating revenue. And what that means there in that market contribution is that as projects were conceived and had a certain revenue tag attached to it of how much it would generate for the organization and how much it would cost, those estimates were wildly off. And in some cases, we were investing and betting on the wrong projects. And that loss in margin contribution only eroded the gains that we were banking on for those products to have in our portfolio of offerings. And lastly here, 50% is the amount of rework that product managers were having to go through. And the cost of that rework was in the millions of dollars in wasted work. Think about to what I highlighted earlier around project managers not having good control over their project teams, able to lead them from the front and drive and execute good process. They were leading from the rear. They were trying to move people around and clean up various challenges. Bad validated data as it moved through the stage gate process ended up causing project teams to have to kind of go back to earlier stages, identify what those challenges are, correct them, and work them through. So as we've understood this problem here and we've partnered with this organization and their internal consulting unit to really drive a very powerful, impactful solution, we've been working hard on two fronts. One is to redesign this process. Many of us, and the challenges that I asked you to think of for your own organization, that really big, important problem to solve, often involves process redesign, how we go about the work that we do differently. And secondly, it involves the people that are part of operating that process and thinking around how we can reposition the work that they do. Do we have a good sense of the competencies and skills, the right kind of mindset, the right set of skill set that those individuals need to possess in order to be able to do that redesign process work effectively? And we've been working, we've been investing, we're going to be sharing some of the aspects of our solution here. But the great news is with the model that we've been using and the impact of this project, we've been able to realize some really powerful early successes. Think back to that example that I gave you of moving from that innovation tunnel where every idea that comes in comes out to something that looks more like an innovation funnel. And over the year and a half that we've worked with this organization, we've been able to eliminate and move 98% of projects coming through our stage gate down to 74%. And that is having really great bottom line impact because it's allowing us to invest capital on projects that are going to have a stronger return. It is helping us recoup internal resources by no longer focusing on things that are not going to drive the return that we're really looking for. And it's also helping us become better decision makers by really strengthening the muscle to say no to certain things, which can be a hard thing sometimes for mid-level managers to be able to do with a lot of their frontline associates. So we can move along to the next screen here. And what we realized is that if we were going to be successful in tackling this very powerful and challenging stage gate problem on a scale such as this, we needed to go about it with a very different approach. If we were going to buck the trend of enterprise-wide change failure, which so often occurs, we can't do the things the same way that we always do. And we need an approach that is impactful, rigorous, flexible, but one that also leverages feedback and integrates data. Following those same old best practices, it was clear it wasn't going to cut it, but we needed to build on some solid strategies that we had used before, a solid change foundation, but breathe new life into it and do it a different way. And so as we've taken the best of good foundational and change strategy, and we've married feedback and data to it, we've created something that we call the digital transformation solution. And it's based on 3 building blocks and 2 organizational dynamics. And as we tell this stage gate story here, we'll weave in the various aspects so that you can see how this shift is achieved strategically and tactically. And as you'll see, this approach is something that we use. And I'm sharing, one story here, but it's something that we use with all of our clients, and we hear from all of our clients that really have helped us validate and refine this model. So digital transformation is something that is widely recognized by organizations and very essential for continued success in today's digital landscape. We know that 95% of executives who were surveyed in a 2020 Harvard Business Review study called Rethinking Digital Transformation said digital transformation has become more important to business success in the last 2 years. Digital transformation is a top priority because successful transformation yields profound benefits. 84% agreed that new business opportunities are emerging as companies focus on transforming their business processes and redoing the way they go to market and the way that they engage in their most critical processes. The unfortunate side of this is that 70% of digital transformation initiatives fail to reach their goals. Of the 1.3 trillion that was spent on digital transformation last year, an estimated 900 billion went to waste. And so we may ask ourselves, why do so many digital transformation efforts fall short? Well, companies fail to recognize that while digital technologies present tremendous opportunity for growth, digital transformation is a comprehensive process that spans far beyond technology. If mindsets, processes, and ways of working do not also equally evolve and change, we're going to fall short. We're going to miss the mark here. And that's something that the digital transformation solution addresses, is that, yes, it focuses on how we can do this work digitally, but it ensures that we focus on how we move mindset, how we move process, and how we move the behaviors in which people use in the way that they work to really avoid wasting resources. So let's take a look here at a couple key aspects, and then we'll start using our framework as we explain the rest of the solution here. So one of the things that we recognize, and it's core to the work that we do at Thinaer, it's core to the work in the sister organization Develop Me that we've partnered with, is that we recognize that you engage in interactions every day. Interactions occur around you in all aspects and involve you providing feedback through all sorts of means: chats, surveys, emails, calls. Think about all that activity and all those interactions between people and machines. And what an amazing opportunity for us to be able to capture that. I mean, that's the real heart and life of the organization. Think about how much work happens in that capacity. The challenge is that it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to capture and systematically organize those interactions. But if we are able to do so, we've positioned ourselves with a very powerful data source that we can utilize to not only inform the project work that we do, to not only keep a very powerful pulse on the people and things within our organization, but we can also use the insights that we derive from that analytically to drive our change effort. So our platform here is really what helps us categorize and organize those pieces together. Our platform, Develop Me, is a real-time feedback tool that we unleash within organizations to powerful stakeholders to provide that kind of insight in their own words. The feedback that is provided is both quantitative, so there's questions or behaviors that individuals can score on various scales, typically in our case 1 to 5. But we also ask those feedback providers to enter comments, to share their thoughts, to answer questions, to include detail, to coach others in their own language and words. And it's really a combination of collecting that quantitative feedback and that comment-driven feedback that we're able to analyze and then fold into this digital transformation model that we use. Here's a screenshot here that shows just how easy it is for individuals to launch their app, select an individual, provide feedback to them. Another two core aspects to this platform that I would want to emphasize is that it's really easy in our platform for individuals to seek feedback from each other. We recognize that seeking feedback is a powerful dynamic that creates a ongoing virtuous cycle of feedback. So when I request feedback from you, especially if I'm a leader, I'm inviting you to provide feedback, which can really encourage and cause others to have trust and to give. And the other important aspect of our digital feedback model is the ability to give feedback on entities. So not just necessarily people, but things, processes, decisions, initiatives. It's a little bit less personal, and people often don't filter and hold back as much when they're providing feedback to sort of a non-person. So let's take a look here at how we can operationalize the digital transformation solution within your own organization as we continue to walk through the work that we did here in transforming the stage gate process. So here's my question for you. What is a critical challenge you are facing within your business where a new approach to solving it is drastically needed? Okay, this is kind of what I linked back earlier. To think about within your organization, what is that problem that needs to be solved? It needs to be addressed. And if we could address it, would be an amazing unlocker in the performance within your financial service organization, okay? On the next screen here, what we have included is a link to our digital transformation tool. I noticed that Brian was kind enough to push that link out within the chat. So if you wanna access that chat box really quickly, you can find that link and launch this digital transformation tool. You can also type in the URL that's shared here on our screen share. This digital transformation tool will walk you through step by step of taking a problem that you have in mind that you initially thought of and working it through the various stages of the digital transformation solution. By doing so, there's some really great benefits. First, your inputs are going to be collected and transformed into a digital version of our worksheet. You can see our worksheet here. By entering that information, it will be really nicely populated into a stylized worksheet with that content, with the model that you'll receive, and you'll have the ability then to kind of leverage that within your organizations, within your teams to move forward with a change effort. In addition to that, we have drafted a white paper on this particular change model, and so you'll receive this as well. The white paper explains in detail the digital transformation solution, all the facets in much more detail than I'm sharing here, which will allow you to learn a little bit more about the model and envision how you can operationalize it. And lastly, we're very deeply passionate about digital transformation and the digital transformation solution. And by submitting this, we would be happy to have follow-up conversation with you, 15, 20-minute call to kind of learn more about the challenge that you're going after, share more about the experiences that we're equally working through as we aim to do digital transformation work in a more successful and rigorous manner. So I'm going to continue to tell a bit of our StageGate story, and as I do that, I'll also be encouraging you to kind of follow along with the tool that you access. You'll be able to provide your inputs to your problem as I'm talking a little bit through the various ways that we solve this StageGate. So very core to our solution in tackling the StageGate process was the use of a real-time feedback platform called DevelopMe. And I've introduced that a little bit already. And as I said as well, that this digital feedback tool has the ability to seek feedback from people, but also something that we call entities. So non-people, things, processes, systems, decisions, initiatives, all those things within the organization that are very, very meaningful, that you and your associates interact with all the time. And you know what? We want to understand what the nature of that is. That is the business environment. That is the culture. That is the organization. And as we're moving forward with solving the problem, we want to do it in a way that is really connected to associate need. And the way that we do that is by seeking feedback from associates on those things. So let's take a look at this next slide here, because the digital transformation solution recommends 3 areas where you seek feedback on your digital transformation challenge. We want to know, in thinking about the people, what are the competencies? If we're to solve this digital transformation problem and do it in a different way, what are the competencies and capabilities that your people need to have? Let's go to the, let's also talk a little bit around process, okay? If we're to do this digital transformation process in a new and different way, what would it look like? How could we create a better end-to-end process that does this work in the right sequence, that resolves very impactful interdependencies or previous bottlenecks that large associate groups know exist but have been unable to get a voice to highlight it? And lastly, the last core building block where we want feedback is around our systems capabilities. We want to know what are the technologies, the systems that interact with the processes, that interact with the people. Are those systems enablers? Are they doing what we need them to do? Do those systems need to be replaced, better integrated, reworked, so that these 3 core building blocks can fit nicely together and provide a very firm foundation for our change effort? On this next screen here, what we can show you is we identified within our change effort what are the people competencies, what are the process innovations, what are the system changes that we need to collect feedback about. And in this video here, we've not only listed what was important critical feedback areas for us to identify, but we also color coded them. And so you'll be able to kind of go back as you rewatch this video in the future and you have your copy of your white paper, you'll be able to see how we aligned together. On the people side, we knew that we wanted feedback from large functional areas. We also wanted feedback from leadership, and we wanted feedback across various work locations. On the process side, we knew that there were very core processes to this particular stage gate process. They're listed here in detail. We also knew that there were some initiatives strategically that were being launched within the organization, and as we worked to create a solution, that we were going to pilot this process. Again, those were the three process areas where we wanted feedback. And lastly, there were very specific technology systems that we wanted to use as well that we knew were core to the systems taking place. So as we're moving through this tool together, I want to ask you to kind of go back to our digital transformation tool and think a little bit around the problem that you identified and the associated people competencies. Spend a moment here thinking about how you would need to have your people work differently if you were to solve this particular problem. What are the core competencies that they would need to possess? What are the strengths that they currently have of core competencies that they would need to greater emphasize? Are there gaps? And if there are gaps, how are we going to develop? What are some strategies that we can utilize here to close that gap together? Once you've had a chance to click and enter your people competency answers to these questions, you can click on systems capabilities. Thinking about systems that we highlighted earlier, the systems that interact very powerfully with process. With those systems, where is there a lack of data? Where is there a lack of system optimization? Are there some really powerful data pieces or data sources that if your associates had access to them, would enable their work to perform at a higher level? You can list those systems, you can list some of the integration connectivity issues that exist, and what the perceived benefits would be if you were able to go ahead and resolve those. Once you've had a chance to enter that, you can start to focus a little bit around process innovation. So thinking about your problem and the core process that's associated with it. Are there aspects of that process that you would want to keep? Are there some strengths in the way that it currently works? But are there some ways that really could be optimized, where redundancy could be reduced, where there's an acute pain point or inefficiency that occurs? When you've had a chance to kind of enter that, you can go ahead and do that within the tool and click next. And what this has allowed us to do at this point is we're sort of using the digital transformation as a model to drive successful digital transformation. You've laid the foundational ground pieces. You've thought through people, you've thought through systems, you've thought through processes. You know now where you want feedback. So looping back to our stage gate problem that we're talking you through, our visualization now shows not only the entities where we sought feedback, but we sought feedback from associates. We sought feedback from associates over time. We can now see where there was significant amount of feedback noted by darker circles in gray and where there are lighter circles of that feedback coming in. And we collected this feedback significantly over time. On the next slide here, I want to show you some examples of the kind of feedback that we created, that we received. There is potentially a need for a template or a document to guide the teams through the ideation process to ensure that ideas are being documented in an efficient way. Secondly, while documentation for the stage gate process bloomed to well over 100 pages, there was detail that was still lacking. And lastly, a piece of feedback here that focused on how decisions are being made with the feedback being received. You can see now from looking at this that the digital transformation gave us a framework to know within the organization where to seek feedback from. Collectively, we know feedback is very important to the digital feedback work that we do. That feedback, that input is data, it's gold. we need to ensure that as we move to unlocking our digital transformation process, that we're soliciting feedback from the right places and in the right way. And our digital transformation tool can be a great way to start to position you through understanding what those critical sources are. As we move to kind of wrap up our presentation today, we'll encourage you to continue to move through the digital transformation tool. There's a prompt here for thinking about the feedback that we collect and thinking about what ways that you can use it. How can you effectively collect it? What tools for feedback do you have? How can you analyze it? How can you ultimately disseminate it? What will you do with it when you receive it? The last step of our digital transformation process involves taking that feedback on those 3 core building blocks, all of those insights, and integrating it into our change model so that we can go about our work in new and different ways. So with that, I will stop there. I will encourage all of you to keep working through the digital transformation tool. Please go ahead and submit that. As noted before, you'll receive a digital version of that worksheet. You'll receive a copy of our white paper. And we're more than happy to engage with you on the other side to talk more about your change effort and how you can enable that process. So Cliff, I'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And with that, in fact, Jose, we'll go to you on the Q&A. And if you could share out too, Jose, you probably already have. I haven't seen the link. As a feedback company, we would love to hear from you. So there's a URL that Jose has posted in the chat. And I'll
Very
stop
good.
sharing my screen.
Yes, Cliff. So we have just 3 minutes here for Q&A. So let's. I'm gonna go right into it. First question came from John Saunders in Maryland, and John asks, how do you inspire and empower the team members to feel safe enough to want to engage in this thoughtful process?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a lot of it comes from the top, right? And so having that clear line of sight from leadership, John, is really critical. And one way that actually nothing creates a feedback culture more. It's not, the goal isn't necessarily to get people to give feedback, it's to get people and associates to request it. And that starts that little snowball at the top of the hill, and then it just accumulates over time. So I hope that helps, John. Thanks for that question.
Yes, let me keep going down here. I want to go as many as this as possible. Eklek, around along those same lines, is ask maybe you can just confirm this. Is the feedback process meant for employees or only, or does it cover a complete loop with executives in the company as well and customers?
Yeah, it's a complete loop. So think of it as a network where peers can give feedback to one another. There can be upward feedback, up the hierarchy, down the hierarchy, and then even externally. If you haven't seen yesterday's presentation, I would encourage you to watch it with Fiserv, where they're collecting real-time feedback from the financial institutions they service in a real-time way. So it's this whole network of people that are able to give, seek, and receive feedback really dynamically, but in a highly organized way.
And I don't know if you talked about this, Cliff, but some of the questions are about a bit of if there's some sort of mechanism or thought process into validating some of this feedback, because you're getting lots of feedback from different people. There are subject matter experts in there, and there are people who just think they know some things. And so how do you kind of weigh the feedback?
Yeah, it's a great question. In fact, we could spend a lot of time on that alone. I know we're coming up here on time, so I'll answer it really quickly. And then Michael, please add any color. But one of the techniques that we use is natural language processing to understand a lot of the comments and then ascribe them to specific feedback dimensions that a client is interested in. So for example, if a client wants to be have a growth-oriented culture, we could run against algorithms the comments that are coming through our system from different employees to see on an index just how well, a validated index, how well a particular company is performing against a series of custom dimensions.
Yeah, Cliff, and just a quick build on that. That's a great job. That's how we measure it. But because we use our feedback tool and we systematically categorize the feedback, we then take those measurements and we triangulate it. We ensure that associates, leaders, and functional areas are all in agreement, and the alignment of those measurements across those 3 stakeholder groups helps us know this is valid or further investigation is needed.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Cliff and Michael, thank you so much for a great, insightful presentation once more. This is a really interesting, deep way of connecting feedback in the organization, understanding what's going on, and really impacting the culture with a lot of openness and I believe building trust with this feedback mechanism. So thank you, great work, and thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jose. Thank you everyone for listening in.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this completes our segment. Our next presenter will be the head of business excellence and operational transformation at Siemens. And she is going to share with us the journey at Siemens, specifically with a focus on the process management approach when you're engaged into these large system migration projects. So you'll be hearing directly from Nurai Gurtakin Sen, who again leads business excellence and operational transformation at Siemens. So I look forward to that. I look forward to seeing you back again at the top of the hour. If you have comments, if you have questions, jump on LinkedIn. You can look under my name or under the Vijay's Bajaj's name and post your comments and questions. And ourselves, the speakers, will look into what's going on in there and provide feedback. So thank you. We'll see you back soon.